What's going on, guys? It's your boy Showtime Satch, and today we are back with another episode of Satchmo Chess. I'm really excited to show this one off. We use the time pressure in this one. That's going to be kind of the motive of this video, trying to show you how to use time and complex moves to win your games. So at the end of the day, time is as important a part of chess as the pieces, man. People like to overlook that, and I kind of think it's cheap to win on time. But hey, man, you got to get your wins how you get your wins. So. We're going to show this game off. It is a very interesting game. It's kind of why the time took so long, but we're going to go ahead and get into this one. My opponent is Justin A-Hole, and he has the white pieces here. And he starts off with e4, the best by test. I'm a big fan of e4, and also a fan of c5. We go into the Sicilian defense, and right away he plays d3, which tells me, he's not really trying to get into theory. He's trying to, just develop his pieces and have a pretty normal game. Or so I expected. We respond with d6 and myself. D6, pretty common move here, preparing to develop the light square bishop. Also preparing my knight to f6, so I don't get pushed. So he plays f4. We develop, instead of developing the knight to g6, we developed the knight to c6 first. Just because he did push this f square, which was an interesting move. F4 is not a move you typically play at the start of the game, but hey, man, these opponents like to get aggressive out here, so we'll let him cook. And then we get bishop e3. It's a move. So black right now is already a little bit better, but this is the opening. This is really hard to get a strong advantage out of the opening. Just playing simple moves. Now we have e6 preparing, my bishop, my dark square bishop to move, and hopefully castle kingside. Knight d2. Now we play g6. Now we kind of switched up the motive here. Now that I see he's bringing this knight out, I expect him to castle queenside. So instead of my usual plan of putting my bishop on e7, we're going to try and fianchetto it, put it on g7, and apply some pressure to this lone diagonal. Now we get c3. My opponent immediately countering that, trying to block off this dark square line, but we're going to go for it anyways. Go ahead and put it on g7. Computer likes h6. I mean, you're a maniac if you play that, but all right. Queen f3, bringing his queen out. Typically you want your knight on f3, but that's where he decides to go with his queen, so that's where he goes. And now we play queen a5. Queen e5, the computer thinks it's a mistake. It thinks you just play b6 and just keep pushing all these pawns out before developing your pieces. And hey, maybe the engine's correct, but I play human chess. To me, this is a human move. It's preventing him from castling. If he were to castle queenside, queen takes a2 would be a major threat. So for the time being, we prevent this kingside castle. And now we get knight e2. And now the real reason that move wasn't as great was because of this pawn push in the center. My king is stuck in the center, not very protected. My pieces aren't really developed to stop a pawn push, but he doesn't go for it. So knight e2 develops his pieces like a normal person. And now I also develop my pieces like a normal person. Here we get knight g7. And now he goes g4. And right before I castle kingside, he says go g4. And I'm not going to lie. If you look at my opponent's pawn structure right here, I'm getting a little scared. I don't really like where this is heading. So I decide not to castle kingside. I'm going to hold off my ambitions because, I'll move like f5. It could get a little scary opening up the f file. He has his queen there. If he slides his rook there, it's just not a position to put myself in. So, okay, we don't have to castle. We play b5. Once again, computer thinks I'm an idiot. Should have pushed it. It doesn't matter. It's an inaccuracy, but the idea here is to push here on the queen side because I know if he's going to castle, he's going to have to castle towards this queen side. He's not going to castle king side. His pawn structure is very pushed, and that doesn't seem like a smart move for him. So we play b5, and my opponent plays h4. Once again, he said, well, you're not going to castle. I'm not going to castle queen side. You're not going to castle king side, okay? I'm like, okay, so we're going to war. b4. b4, trying to open up the position here. Give me an open b file to hopefully put my rook along and start attacking. And now we get c4. These are all general moves. So he's attacking my queen here. We drop the queen back to c7. This was the only move, really. I mean, I could have gone d8, but, why would you go back to the starting square? He had to protect this d6 pawn. I could not allow him to take that with check. It would have been, very bad for my position. And now we get d4. d4 is a blunder according to the computer. This has been a very... we've had a couple mistakes here and there, very minor mistakes, something in the computer. d4, the computer is not a fan of, and for that reason is bishop a6. Bishop a6 comes with a couple ideas here. Obviously, we're attacking this knight, so the knight has to move. You can't really defend it because, d5 could always be coming. So we get knight d2. It sets up a fork that I ended up not finding, so it doesn't really matter. We go bishop takes c3, pawn takes, and then queen e5. And the reason the computer doesn't like this move, it wanted me to remove the defender of the c3 pawn and then go after it, try to capture it. We could easily win a pawn here. Look, I'll show you the computer line. This is not complicated. Anyone over the board could have figured this out. Pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes. Okay, so we want a pawn. We got attack on the rook, and that's, this is a fine way to play. It's actually the computer's recommended way to play. But I don't play for pawns. Listen, I want to attack. I want to be aggressive, and I like to complicate the position. So instead of that, we go queen e5, adding more pressure to the... Now the threat is to capture this knight if I so choose, and then, capture this pawn, put pressure, and it makes the position a lot more restricted. So if we look at the time right here, 7:20, 7:50, about even. I'd be like, hey, Satch, what are you going to do? How are you going to put the time on them like this? Listen, if you want to... keeping pieces on the board, if you notice your opponent is in time trouble, you really want to not make aggressive moves. Right now, we're not. So I'm kind of rambling before we get into the meat of things, but we play queen e5, and he attacks with knight b3. So let's go back to the review tab here, so I can see what the computer wants me to do. Once again, they wanted him to capture here. I did kind of miss the idea, because there is a beautiful idea here that I miss, and the computer's going to yell at me. I wish I found this myself. This is the kind of move I like to play. Bishop captures, and you might say, hey, your queen's hanging. And, I didn't really think of it beyond this. But obviously, if he decides to capture the queen, then I capture his queen. Also a threat on the rook. Also, I can recapture the knight. And all is well for Satchmo here. And even if you play something like, the main idea here is that if he doesn't capture the queen, then I capture this pawn here with check and a fork on the rook. It is currently defended by this knight, but things can happen. It was a nice idea that I missed. So I'll give the computer that one. I should have played that move. I didn't. Instead, we go queen a3 here, kind of trying to keep the pressure. I didn't, like I said, I'm not trying to trade out. I'm trying to keep all the pieces on the board. Fairly quickly, he plays bishop c1, and we go back queen a4. So I'm trying to keep my, my pieces over here involved in this attack. It's going to get hectic. And now we got bishop b2. Bishop b2 here, once again defending from any kind of capture ideas. But we will see. Peter says it's a mistake, and it is a mistake because of rook b8. This bishop is now undefended, and he really is going to have a hard time moving his pieces. So we have a pin here, and that is just going to be the start. This is going to be, we have this knight that's under attack. You don't want to lose your light square bishop here, so that'll be the start. And he plays pawn takes, and instead of capturing back, which the computer likes, I push the pawn instead. The reason I didn't want to push to capture back is because I didn't want this isolated pawn here. I thought that was bad for my position. It keeps this bishop is now pinning this pawn to this bishop, because once again, if he pushes, that bishop is unprotected. So as you see, the pins are starting. The confusion is starting to set in for my opponent. He's got to think a little more. As you see, now we're down to under 6 minutes. I do have a minute advantage on the clock. So I noticed that, and I'm going to keep complicating the position. He closes it down with e5. So he locked out my dark square bishop, yes, but now I have, not necessarily a passer yet, but he has doubled pawns in the c file, so these would be easy pickings in the endgame. And this is a better position for black. We go bishop c4, another great move. Once again, this computer really hates this knight and wants me to take out this knight so I can focus on this weak c3 pawn, but instead we go for more pins. Like I said, I'm trying to keep peace on the board. And now there is a threat here of capturing this knight as, we'd recapture with the queen, bishop would be unprotected. Once the bishop moves, this rook is unprotected, and it gets a little ugly. So something you got to keep in mind. There's a lot of different variations here to consider. So my opponent plays knight ec1, which I thought was a good move. Computer doesn't like it, but, defending the knight with the other knight obviously does, eliminate a defender, the c3 pawn, and it blocks in your rook. So there are give and takes. And we go knight a5. Once again, the computer wants me to switch my focus to the king side here. It's saying you're kind of locked up. And once again, the idea here is that you cannot take this knight because I get rook takes, And now, rook on the second rank. This is a very active position for me, even though might lose this pawn or whatever. We can capture back, and all is well. I like this position for black. This is kind of what I was hoping for, that he would capture. Computer, let's see if it gives any eval here. I don't think it will. Okay, my computer's very slow. Things happen, but I like that position personally. That's what I was going for. But he decides not to capture. Instead, we get bishop captures, which computer also thinks is a mistake. Once again, the computer hates this game. Thinks this is the worst game of all time, but for me, I like it. We get knight takes c4, and now what do you do with this bishop? This bishop's kind of trapped. If you move the rook, you're putting a lot of, there's a lot of tactics here. Though this, once again, that's why this video is gonna be called what it's called, man, because we're just going to keep adding tactics that make it for you to think and calculate many different moves at once, look at the different pins, and it just gets tough. So he plays rook h2. My opponent, I think, is defending fabulously because all the ideas here I had to sacrifice and were kind of all shut out by him. Once again, instead of capturing right away, we're going to bring our second knight into the attack here with thoughts of it going to knight a5 to once again do the same tactic where you don't want to capture because you'll lose your dark square bishop. Opponent now plays h5, so finally some play on the king side is what my computer was hoping for. And so, I kind of just ignore it. We go knight 6 a5 to be more precise, and we put more pressure on this pin piece. You put PP on the PP. I learned that from a great international master. He attacks my bishop. Okay, bishop f8. This is honestly a more active square than what it was doing before, so he kind of helped me out. Although if this f file ever gets open, there could be some ideas there. So bishop f8, we're threatening this pawn, and now instead of protecting the knight as he decides to jump in and protect this c5 pawn. He's really trying to hang on to these doubled c pawns. But I don't really think that's the best idea. We get knight takes b3, and he decides to capture back with the pawn. It would be pinned, however, obviously there are other threats here. The bishop protects the rook, so we play queen takes, capture the pawn. Now we're threatening to win this bishop here. Knight c1, he attacks my queen, and we just drop it back. And now, what do you do if you're blocked? You can't really move this bishop. You're going to lose the dark squared bishop, and it's going to leave this one unopposed. Also, the c5 pawn is unprotected. So a lot of ideas here. Now let's look at the time. 1:23 for my opponent, and we still have a lot of game left to play. That's kind of the idea of not capturing right away because 1:23, there's a lot of possibilities, a lot of things I can think through. Well, the opponent doesn't really have that luxury, so he plays bishop a3. We go ahead and take care of that dark square bishop, and now we get to capture this with a threat on the rook. However, I did miscalculate here because there's a great move. I'll let you pause if you can find it. This is a mistake. And yeah, the move is rook b3. And now the problem with rook b3 is if I move my queen, I lose both of my rooks. And if I don't move my queen, I lose my queen. So this is still an even position for black just based on the positioning on the board. But the only move I have to play is queen takes b3, which is not a move I wanted to play. And so now we look at this position. We have two rooks and a bishop versus a queen and a rook. But we do have this passed a pawn. But more importantly, I have 3 minutes on the clock. My opponent has 46 seconds. So not only is he going to have to win this endgame, he's going to have to do it very quickly. And we sort of take advantage of that. We get rook c2, and I go ahead and play castles here. Once again, somewhat inviting a little bit of threat. There is this checkmating threat, but that was the best way to get my rook involved in the game. So he goes f5, trying to take advantage of that open f-file. We just throw in a check. There's 30 seconds left. This wasn't the best move, but now he has to respond. King d2. We go ahead and captures, and bishop e7. The thought of bishop e7 was I wanted him to push because if he pushes this and he has both of his pawns, he's kind of blocking his own queen from checkmating me. So it would have been pretty nice. And there's 19 seconds on the board. He has his queen and the rook. And he hangs his queen. Right here he hangs his queen. But I noticed he has 13 seconds. So I'm like, well, I could capture the queen or I could just give him some checks. So that's exactly what we do here. This check, he has to, once again, he has to move his king because he can't really block it. Throws a king move. And you know what? There is 11 seconds left. We attack his queen. He's got to move his queen. He's got to think fast. Whenever your opponent's low on time, you got to come up with moves that are forceful. That's a forcing move. Queen moves. He has 4 seconds. Rook e1 sets the blunder. However, this easily wins me the game. After rook e1, we get king e1. And then we just go Rook D1, because why not? He has to react. 0.7 seconds left. This is now forced mate in about 3 moves here as I hang my bishop, but it does not matter as the game is over and black wins on time. If you're wondering about what the game review has to say about this game, it gave me an in-game accuracy of 4.3. I don't think I've ever seen. I didn't know it got below like 10 or 15. 4.3. Opening, 87. Mid-game, 70. And they're like, oh, that's good. That's great. End-game was a 4.3. But it doesn't matter as white runs out of time, up 11 points of material. And ladies and gentlemen, black has just won the game. And that's all I got for you, man. Put PP on the PP and have a good day.